All right, so I want to thank everybody for joining us tonight. We will have several people jumping in here as we progress through the presentation, but we wanted to get started because there is a lot to cover. So for those who don't know who I am, my name is Patty Schramm. I'm the Parent Resource Trainer Coordinator for the SALT Talks. This month, during October, we began our Part 1 series of independent living. If you've missed a couple of them, you can go back to YouTube and watch some of our previous sessions. But we've had Allison Boot, who is an independent. She lives independently. She's married. She went to school and everything. And she's also an author. She kicked us off at the beginning of the month. And then we were looking at Home Sweet Home last month. So tonight, we are going to look at charting the life course, because this is a tool that you can use. It's very helpful when you're transitioning in any part of life. And Celia, our speaker, will get into that. And you'll see how this is used. Several of the county boards are beginning to get trained in this. We have more and more ambassadors like in the county board. So you'll be able to find out a little bit about that. Of course, you have always Celia to go back to too. But with that, I'm going to go ahead and let Celia take it from here. As I said, this is part 1. January will be part 2. But we also have next week, we'll be talking about transportation, and you can see that in our schedule and all the details in our Facebook or schedule or newsletter. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Celia. And I see your screen, so you're all set.
All right, great. Thanks so much. I'm going to appeal to the empaths in the room. And part of being part of the Charting Life Course group is kind of revealing what you need, what you want, what you don't want. So I'm going to start the conversation by appealing to anybody who's an empath who's willing to turn their camera on, because it helps me to see you. I'm just going to do one ask. And if you can't, I know people are multitasking, but we're really kind of in this space. We're going to begin focusing on what we need in a particular space or a particular room. You'll learn more about me as we go, but I just want you to know that sometimes it's really helpful for me to see faces when I do these presentations, because it helps me relax and it helps me focus in and feel like I'm talking to somebody, and I think I'm better at what I'm sharing. So we're here to talk about Charting the Life Course. We're focusing on that area of independent living. But I want to tell you why I'm here and my why. So when you look at this slide, if you have a second to turn to your screen while you're listening to me, this is my why. I am the sibling, the sister-in-law, the aunt, and the mom to individuals with developmental disabilities. And when I did the work and started thinking about my family in this role, I'm also a daughter of a parent who had a disability. And so this is why I do Charting the Life Course. I say every time I do this presentation, if I had had this early on, it would have changed my daughter's trajectory. It would have changed my trajectory, and there's her siblings' trajectory, and my husband's trajectory. So I kind of sound kind of crazy when I talk about it, but I just am passionate about living life with this understanding and these tools in your hands as you move forward. And transition is a great space for it. But as Patty said, you can use this anytime. It doesn't have to be transition into adulthood. It could be transition from Part C to Part B services. It could be transition from a building. It could be problem solving that doesn't involve a transition at all. But I just want you to know it's brought here by the state of Ohio. As Patty said, county boards are now involved, the state agencies involved, Board of Ed is involved. We are so pumped this year because they're not involved by Patty sitting back and going, yeah, come on in and show families this through school. They're putting funding behind it. By the end of this year, there will be over 90 ambassadors trained in education alone. So everybody is beginning to realize the strength of this, and it's not a curriculum. The whole reason it was built was for families. So hold on tight, because this is for and about you. But to start off, I want you guys to just in the chat, take a second and gauge where you are. Have you never heard of it? Have you heard of it, but you've never used it? Have you used one tool, or have you used 2 or more? And if you'll just put a 1, 2, 3, or 4, or an A, B, C, and D, sorry, into the chat, so I can kind of gauge how I talk about this with all of you. based on whether you've heard of it before. Okay, I'm giving a minute. Ooh, Patty Schroemer. All right, let's see. Okay. Callie, yay. Okay, I might tap into you guys and ask you to talk if you're willing. You don't have to. Everybody can say no to me. All right, so most of you have never heard of it, or you've heard of it and not used it. So this is a great place for me to be. I will promise you that you will leave this with a little understanding and either a desire to learn more or I'll ask for a willingness to ask questions so that I can taper it. If you have a question during, put it in the chat. Patty, if you have a minute to kind of keep an eye on that chat for me, interrupt me if it's something that needs to be said right there. So for understanding, I would really appreciate it because we got newbies in the room and I'm super pumped about that. So the primary belief of the Charting LifeCourse framework and the tools that were built out of that is that all people have the right to live, love, work, play, learn, and pursue their life aspirations in their community. Hard stop. Not all people with disabilities, all people. And this work was started with a stakeholders meeting in 2012. And in that stakeholders meeting, they made sure that the family voice was heard. So that was really important. So I keep wanting to reiterate here, the whole purpose of this work is to empower families to have the lives they want. Okay. So Charting the LifeCourse is truly about having different conversation of what's possible, identifying new opportunities and new supports, conversations with and as a family or a team, right? Conversations reflecting on the past and what's already been tried, and conversations about possibility, not disability. Okay. I promise you in this room, you will hear things that you'll go, oh, I want to share that. And it likely may not be somebody with a disability because you'll see ways to use that are outside the realm of disability. And that's what I love about it. It's about thinking deeply and broadly, right? It's about having a conversation, and conversations take time, and conversations take the ability to listen, and not just to the adults in the room, but to listen to everyone, right? And give everybody an opportunity to share in the ways they're able to share. Charting a LifeCourse is done by me, meaning whoever is saying that. So not me only, but you or your child or your teacher. If I'm doing Charting the LifeCourse to look at my own life, it's done by me or with me, not for me. If you as a parent are doing Charting the LifeCourse with your child, not for your child, right? You do it with them, or they do it and you become the scribe. And then you check in. Is this what you meant? Did I do that okay? It's really about putting them in that conversation in the ways that they can and thinking about other ways to bring them in. I always get asked the question about how do we do it when they're nonverbal? And we'll get into that, and remind me if I don't, okay? But the most important part of this, when we talk about, and Patty's kind of saying that independent life, that life after school, when I don't have a place to go, right? It's a whole vision. When we're in schools, at least my experience was, we talked a lot about employment. Are they going to work? Are they not going to work? Where are they going to go? What are they going to do? We didn't talk about social life. We didn't talk about things, where they were going to live when they left home. We didn't talk about those things. Now, I hope your teams are beginning to broaden, especially if they're beginning to think about things in this framework, because there's more access to it. But that person-centeredness, we have a whole life. And if we only work, that's not much of a life. So we've got to be able to think and talk about this with our kids in a way that we're developing a vision for all aspects of life. Think of that cocktail party. When you run into somebody and you meet new people, what do you do? Where do you live? Oh, do you go to that church? My sister-in-law goes to that church. Do you know so-and-so? He works at your building. All those things that connect us and make us be seen, right? And so Charting the LifeCourse refers to those pieces, these little icons that you see here, as domains. Okay. And we're going to talk a little bit more about those domains of life in a little bit. So why should we start now? Well, first of all, you can start anytime you want, but guess what? You're here now. So let's start. Let's think about where this might fit. I want everybody to take a deep breath and know they don't have to do everything that I'm going to show them today. One tiny thing, one first step, one conversation. If you're a professional, one student. Okay. So just think about it, but anybody can do it and it fits anywhere. If you use one of these tools, you could take it to church and go, he'd like to volunteer. Can you look at this and help him find a spot where he's valued? You could take it to school and say, can we work on our future planning statement here or our transition plan using this information? You could take it to a job interview and go, this is who I am. You don't have to take a piece of paper anywhere. It might just give me the confidence to remember to tell people what's important to me. So you've got all these different options. It aligns with the things you're already doing. If your child has an ISP, an individualized service plan with their county board, or you're beginning conversations around that, it aligns with that. It's built into it. There'll be questions around each of the domains. So you'll receive this kind of one-page summary that is much like one of the tools that I'm going to show you. The Ohio Department of Education, as I said, and the Office for Exceptional Children are on board. There are people within schools in Southwest Ohio that have been trained as ambassadors. So as much as I want to keep working with any one of you that want to, you can work with people at your educational service center. You can work with teachers and intervention specialists that have done it if they're in your district and in your school. In addition, it's a great tool when working for the opportunities for Ohioans with disabilities. Patty, would you put, I'm sure they know that, but because I put OOD, I'm just realizing instead of, will you put that in there in the chat box for me, that OOD equals opportunities for Ohioans with disabilities, which is your voc rehab, your vocational rehab, your employment place space, and the supports you can get for those. Some of your kids might already be working with them. Ohio Rise, which is another group that can help support our kids. So it can be used by families independently, not connected to school, not connected to county boards. We just use it to think about things. It can develop a shared language, and it's an easy set of tools that you can access and think about whenever you come across a change, something unexpected, a problem, and we'll show you different ways you can do that. So a one-page person-centered description. This is a very basic, simple tool, but I always introduce it first because it brings you back to who am I? What do you need to know about me? And that applies to moms walking into IEP meetings. That applies to moms and dads walking into manifestation determination meetings or suspension hearings. This applies to everyone. We all could use in different places and spaces, either in our mind or on a piece of paper, or using it as a script in a meeting or in a student-led conference, a one-page person-centered description. And the one-page person-centered description includes 3 questions that begin with, what do people like and admire about me? And this is something that a lot of our kids with disability don't necessarily know and don't always hear in a deep way. You're funny. Teachers, oh, you're funny. People say, oh, I'm funny. You know, but really, what else do you like and admire? I'm a hard worker. I show up. You know, what are those true things about liking and admiring? They're positive traits, they're talents, they're qualities that others want to, you know, share with you. There are things that are valued. People like fun people. People like smart people. People include adventurous people. So all those things. So we want to make sure that we're helping them tune into that. If they don't know, if you are working on this, you say, what do people like and admire about you? And they say, I don't know. Then then work with them to figure that out. Help them find places and spaces where they can say, why don't you call Aunt Bridget and ask her what she likes and admire about you, and let's write it down. Let's ask your siblings, or better yet, you fill out one for you and share it with family in a way that this isn't something I do just because I have a disability. This is something we all do because we want to know it about each other, right? And it helps me know my value in a room, which gives me confidence and self-determination that I belong there, okay? So the next question is, what's important to me? What makes you feel satisfied, content and comforted. It's not important to me to have Diet Coke in the morning. I mean, it is, but indifference in the sense that what is it? It's being with family. It's making sure that that people think to connect with me. You know, what is it that I need to make that day feel fulfilled? Okay. And that it keeps me content. I think that's a good word when you're wondering, is this, are we talking about what's, and sometimes for a lot of us, Diet Coke does keep us content. I used to describe my coffee as a warm hug. It really did just let me breathe and rest. And so it was something that was super important to me. And if I couldn't start my day, I was a little off kilter, not because of the caffeine, but just the way it made me feel to have a warm drink. How to best support me. And that's specific to a setting. It's in general, in the setting, it helps me meet expectations. So in the general education setting, that's what's missing. In the general education setting, what keeps me and helps me meet expectations? So that would be a great way to know about that best to support me. At church, maybe it's about meeting expectations. Maybe it's what I need to feel that connection that brought me to church in the first place. But having those conversations and getting a sense of it, and some of this, you know, historically from being with them, right? But I caution you to not jump too close to that or give them ideas. Let them marinate in this and begin to develop it a little bit. What do you mean by that? Can you tell me more? Show me. Grab a picture that helps you explain this. Does that make sense? And this is a great tool. I'll bring mine here. So I always do that. I never can do this fast enough. That's why I've started that little announcement at the beginning, is it helps me. I can't tell you, Karen, how much it means to me and Tom as I see you, because you're right in my vision path. So I say thank you to Nicole and thank you to Andrea too. But when I see a face, I can just talk more commonly in a way that I'm just having a conversation as opposed to a presentation. But it's something I make sure I put is, so this is my one page, like and admire. I'm loyal. I work hard. I like to make work fun. I love to connect. Patty knows that about me. I can't tell you how many times after she first called me, I'm calling her about this, I'm calling her about that. I want to help. And I want to work on what's important to others, right? I go on and I create, it's important to me to be listened to, for people to know I'm real. I know I'm kind of squishy and over enthusiastic and passionate about this, but I really am genuine. I do get that excited about this work. My kids are super important to me. Claire is the one that I always say affectionately brought me to this work. But all 3 or 4 of my kids have some point been in this world of difference. And so we're kind of navigating that. And I just love them to death. My husband, Greg, who supports me always, and that it's really important to me to always do my best. And lastly, but probably most importantly, to serve others. And then how can you best support me? Listen to me and answer my questions. So note to self, when I go, can somebody share with me, or I ask a question, I say, put it in the chat. It's important to me that you put it in the chat, not because I want to make you guys work, but because I know then I have something to respond to or talk about. Okay, so I want to share with these just to give you a sense of what they might look like. And I don't think I have ones that have utilized pictures, but I can share those with Patty if people want ones for kids who are nonverbal or don't want to do writing. And we do scribing, and we can do iPhone video. What's important to you? And have them just say it back to you, things like that. And there's never a wrong answer. So even though I've told you that it's what makes you content, what makes you happy, if they say Pokemon and you're like, no, what really makes you, no, Pokemon for now. So, but you can see this one was Kate, and Kate works hard and she's curious and she tries to make others laugh and she wants to do well. When a teacher knows that, when an employer knows that, when a program director knows that, that's something that can really help them change her experience in that space, right? So then, you look at this. It's important for me to be part of whatever is happening where I am. It's important for me to have planned family time and to know when it is. To be home for dinner with mom and dad. My phone's important to me so I can connect with mom and dad. My dog's important to me. So you can see it can be different levels, but it's what makes me feel connected and content. It's important to me to talk about my day before it happens. How many people have kids like that? Or my husband's like that, actually. I want my calendar. Help me remember to put it in my bag. Show me where it is, because I want to know what's happening and I want to be able to go back and reference it. So these are things that can really make a difference in a job environment or in any place that you're going to go that's new, to let them know what's important and how to express it. So I'm going to go back. Whoops. Technology. Here we go. And here's another one. And this one I love for lots of different reasons. But this one was done by somebody as they were beginning, person on the autism spectrum, but they were having trouble with employment. And so we worked together on this to talk about that. And like what's important to her, my sense of humor, my sense of empathy, my ability to juggle multiple tasks is a strength, but she needs to be supported to be able to do that. It is a strength for her, but she needs the support that's in the blue box to make that happen. She had struggled getting and keeping a job. And so she was really trying to go deep with what it meant to be able to keep that job. What kind of things she needed to make sure that she had clear and consistent and easy and specific lines of communication, predictable tasks. So she really got down to those kinds of things at work. It was going to be important for her to be able to keep a job. But there was a lot of lack of trust in her previous positions, partially because of the communication barrier, because of the autism, and it felt like distrust. But she really wanted to understand that she wasn't being micromanaged. And then by creating open communication, identifying clear means to communicate, specific directions. And after she did find a role, she presented this, and things are going really well. We're doing really well. And she's been employed now for about 3 months. So she's almost to her 90-day evaluation. So it's very exciting. So I want you to stop and I want you to imagine your one page. What would be in there? If you guys had a pen and paper, I'd have you write it down. What would be in there? What do people say? If I asked your best friend what they like and admire about you, what would they say? If I asked your spouse, what's truly important to him, what would they say? Do they know? Have you communicated that? If I was going to ask, how can I best support you moving forward with integrating charting the life course into your life? Would you know? Could you base it on other things other than charting life course because you've not had that experience? Could you speculate what you need to feel supported in general? Maybe you think about what your boss would say if he asked, because those are all going to be things that help you understand why and how to do this with your child. But remember, they're situation specific. So if we're talking about employment, that's going to be a really different one page than I want a girlfriend. Having a social life is going to look very different than my one page that I might give my doctor. So you can do this in a lot of different ways. And I'll show you another tool tonight that helps you kind of at least get some focus in all the different ways. So I want you to stop and think about your child. Charting the Life Course tools are written in 2 different voices. The person-centered voice, I. What do people admire and like about me? Or what do people like and admire about my family member? And there's always each version of every tool. And we want to make sure we're clear, because we parents, and I'll say this from my standpoint too, I'm guilty. We're going to fill out the one that says I with all the things that we think we know because we've been with them and nobody knows them better than us. And I'm not going to argue that point. But I really want you, especially at transition age, to start giving them exposure to that self-determination of how they might have that conversation on their own or with you, so that you can say, oh, you're right. You are really smart. Should we put that in the box? And you're doing it together. Okay. So what do you imagine? What do you imagine about their hopes or their dreams? What would you think? And it's fun if you fill one out first and then sit down and do it with them and see if they match. It's kind of like a quiz, test yourself. But really, what do you imagine? If you want to write it down, what do you imagine that you want for him or her? What do you imagine in 2 years? What do you imagine in 5 years? What do you imagine for your family? You could even do it that way and not make it specific to that child, because transition of this particular student is going to change life for everybody. There's going to be new conversations. There might even be, not, depending on where they fall in the family. I always joke that I got like 3 hours back in my day when my kids were out of high school, not because of support or not supporting. It just, I didn't have PTA meetings. I didn't have all those things. So just thinking about that and really imagining. If anybody's really brave, put in the chat box for me, what do you imagine? What are your hopes and dreams as your child transitions? And just put 1 or 2 ideas in the chat box for me. Again, remember my 1-page person-centered description. If you're willing, it will help me. And it's really important in this space to ask for what you need. So increased independence. Okay. To be able to integrate into the community better, independent living. So, it's funny. I have a conversation a lot about independence. And I have a new perspective, partially because of charting the life course, partially because of COVID. I think we all want independence. We are clear that the goal for graduation for every student, I need my son to be able to function after I'm gone. Yeah, future planning. I love that. I absolutely love that. And and friendships. I don't want to miss that, Melissa, because that's so important. And responsible for self-choices. You guys are just setting me up. We could just do a whole chat. I could get rid of my slides. But that space of independence, what I learned I want for my kids, all of them, but my daughter especially, and we've been working really hard on it, is interdependence. Because when I'm independent, sometimes I'm alone, especially with autism. She doesn't necessarily naturally connect. And so we started talking about another Charting Life Course term that I didn't go deep in this, but I'll just mention reciprocity of relationship. How does that work? They don't understand it and they don't realize it's something we're all doing all the time because they don't pick up on it. But I do something for you, and then you're willing to do something with or for me. And there's a whole side of Charting Life Course that's a much deeper dive, but just understanding that interdependence is as important, because that means I have a village, I have people, I have friends, which was already mentioned. Responsible for self-choices. Building decision-making is something we kind of don't think about until all of a sudden we're like, they're 18 and they can't, and all they've wanted to do their whole lives when we worked on choices, 1 or 2 choices, can they make choices out of 3 things? Can they choose from a list? We always know that's a struggle, but all of a sudden we're at a point where they've got to be able to make choices. And we've not necessarily thought about that. I think every transition goal should have conversations about making decisions and understanding that as family members, and I'm guilty of this, is the idea that failing forward, making a mistake, making a bad decision, and being able to recoup and recover from it is a beautiful skill. So, and yes, healthy relationships, yes. And they need help with that, right? And that's something that you can't do overnight. You can't do a seminar on healthy relationships and boom, we're going to have them. It's a skill that's built. And so that skill building, and I'll share with the folks here, 30 was our make or break year. We were still growing and still learning. And actually a counselor told me that. She's like, frontal lobe development, hang on until they're about 30 or 31. And life is so different. So I'll just tell you that early and you'll remember me. But yeah, give yourself more time. You still have time to build. The other thing we want to think about is, what are you avoiding? When you think about what you want, your hopes and your dreams, as important, what am I trying to avoid? What don't I want in the next year, in the next 5 years? What can't happen? Or I'm going to just like crawl back into my bed. And that's important to know and recognize, but it's also knowing the deal breakers for them, right? Because none of us want to be alongside any of our kids, with or without disability, when they're ready to give up. It's the hardest thing as a parent. So knowing what we're trying to avoid is really important. In addition, past experiences, growth spaces, letdowns, challenges. What has happened in the past that you've learned from for yourself and for them? I learned there were certain breaking points in a day, and if I asked her to do one more thing, it was going to not end well. And it was never the same amount of things, but I learned to visually learn the signs. We are right there. And if we don't stop and say we're done, it's going to go the wrong way. But the idea of, so that's something that is really a skill. It's important. But I also maybe, I can read at a second grade level. That's something we worked really hard at. And that's really going to pay off. So this conversation about what's happened in our past that we've done well, or that we, again, knowing that trauma, that things we're trying to avoid, that we never want to happen again. And maybe it happened to somebody else and you just know now that's a possibility, right? So, and you're doing that kind of gathering right now as families. You're saying, okay, what am I going to do? What shouldn't I do? What, first, if you're applying for SSI, how many people have already heard, don't worry, you're going to get denied the first time. Just go back and reappeal, right? We teach each other those things, but that kind of information. So let's look at this first idea of this tool that we're going to call the trajectory, and I'll show it to you in a second, but let's wonder for a minute. If you think about a good life for your child, start putting in the box, what would be in it? 3 years from now, when I say, do you have your good life? What would you be looking for? What would be in the good life? And just start typing words in the box for me, because it's going to give me something to talk about, or otherwise we're going to be stuck here. But what's in a good life for your child? You already said a career. See, now I love that, because Michelle said a career. She didn't say a job. She said a career. We're still with that. It's that long vision. So that's awesome. Thank you, Michelle. Somebody else had said they want them to have friends, right? Friends to hang out with. Healthy relationship, friendships, and see, nobody has said be able to pass algebra. Nobody's, it's important stuff, but seriously, as we're looking at transition, we're looking for a whole new ball game, right? And there was never a goal on making friends. There might have been social emotional stuff, but ability to maintain an appointment. And I can feel you on that one more than I can even go into here. But yes, absolutely maintain, not just a job, but being able to keep a job. Absolutely. And then again, thinking about, what do you not want for them? What are we avoiding? What's your biggest fear? I know somebody mentioned the idea that what are they going to do when I'm gone? Being accepted and respected in the community. I love you guys. We need to hang out. So yes, absolutely. And that takes time. One of the domains is advocacy and engagement. And I call that creating spaces that you're missed when you're gone. Right? And that's really what you want. When somebody goes, oh man, where were you last week? We were all here and you didn't come, or whatever. That's when you know you've checked a box for your kiddo. And now my daughter, who's 30, recognizes that for herself. She called me. She's 30 years old. She called me almost in tears last week because a friend invited her to go camping. And it wasn't, he was talking about the camping trip. We're going to have so much fun. And she went, oh, that sounds fun. He goes, oh, well, you can go. That wasn't what it was, Mom. That wasn't what it was. He was talking about something totally different. He went, oh yeah, I want to invite you to go camping. She's like, he really wanted me there. And that was a huge win for her. And it just absolutely fascinated me that she's finally at a point where she even noticed that nuance, that difference. But she's beginning to live her life differently, partially because of her understanding how to use these tools for herself. So this is what they look like, okay? And I want to show you, when I talked about those past experiences, this back here is the exploring trajectory. It's just 2 boxes. You can't see this one down here, but I'll show you what it looks like later. But it's 2 boxes and 2 lines. And in here, you put what you want. And here down the red box, you put what you don't want in your life, in your week, in your month. You get to decide how long you're looking out and how far you're looking out. In a job, in a social situation, in a girlfriend, whatever you want to do. And then over here, you can write above the line the things that you want to do or that are good to do to get to that thing. And over here, you're going to write the things that you don't want to do or that have happened in the past and you don't want, right? So it's pretty basic graphic organizer. In the, oops, I forgot to show you this. In the planning one, you're seeing past experiences that are helping me get to what I say I want. and past experiences that are probably heading me towards what I don't want. And then in the middle is, what are we going to do next? What's something I can do to grow and still be moving towards? So here I took a lot of classes and volunteered. And here I'm going to apply for a job here and here. And I'm going to call my uncle who works in the field that I like. And I'm going to, because all of those is I want to work in construction, right? Same kind of thing along the bottom. And what you do is you start with the 2 boxes on the right, and then it gets tricky. You go to the 2 boxes on the far left and you do those next. So you're doing backwards planning, if anybody's heard that expression. And then you're going to jump back to past experiences, and then you're going to decide next steps. I want to show you some quick, I'm never going to get through all this. So much to talk about. Some of the different ones. So this one, what I love about this one is it was something really simple. And this one's younger than most of the kids here, but I wanted to show because it was just changing a morning routine. We had gotten into a habit of what mornings did. They just fell apart. And the second I asked you to have your breakfast or put your shoes on, we were having meltdowns and we weren't getting out the door, and mom got to work frazzled. So it was just changing their morning routine was what their trajectory was about. In this next one, it was about helping the kid find his voice and present it in a trajectory of what he truly wanted. And I'm telling you, this kid has autism and he is gifted. His twin brother has autism and is much more impacted. And mom was managing both ends of that. And they did this tool with both of them. And this one he listed, I want to attend the Ohio State University. I want to be a game. I mean, there was just one thing after the other. And as much as mom was terrified and had no interest of him going to Ohio State, they live in Cincinnati. How is she going to support him? What's he going to do? What's going to happen? All the things. She let it got written in the box because that's what he wanted. And that's the conversations they had, right? And what he didn't want, he really does struggle with his weight. He really struggles socially, but he recognizes that he's alone. And he, especially post-COVID, had anxiety, right? And so that was his basic trajectory. But it allowed him to say to his school team, he took it into the school team and said, I want to do this. And they changed how they worked with him. And they helped him for the next couple of years. And he actually applied to both Ohio State and Miami and got in. And he ended up going to Miami. It's much closer to mom's house, but he still got in and he got to apply. And that was super important to him. And it was recognized and they talked about it, but he actually chose Miami on his own for lots of different reasons. It allows you to share what you can do, what you're already doing, telling people I'm capable. That helps with that self-determination, which is what helps us feel and engage in life. He talked about where he's worked. He's attended that game design camp. He sings with the boy choir. So realistically, even though he did it in a separate trajectory, this was his past experiences box, but it allowed him to share what he's doing with his school team. And then it allowed him to know what he needed their help with, because he was having trouble going back into school. So just some ideas. And then this one, and Patty will have provided you in the toolbox with these slides. And I love this one because it led itself into a future planning statement. And I don't know how far you guys are in your journey, if you're going to write another IEP or not. But this was a beautiful one because this was a younger child, but you'll see how it developed. But they talked about things they wanted to do with a future vision. So they would talk about things like increasing collaboration between home and school to finalize toilet training by the end of this year, because they didn't want him to continue. I think he was in 3rd or 4th grade. And so that was a goal. Gaining and generalizing specific communication skills to increase appropriate communication of needs and allow increased participation in the general education classroom. So he was pushed out from a resource room into the general ed, but often would be denied access to the general ed because he was struggling with communication, and therefore his behavior came out in communication. So they started to set this up and they shared it with the IEP team. And then they went into and developed, and it's long, a beautiful future planning statement that allowed them to talk about him having a full life of inclusion and living and working in the community with people he cares about, But in order to accomplish this, we want to see them increase their independence in things like toileting and home and school by the end of this year. And then they went on to a later goal of that general education setting, and they envision them growing and connecting with peers. And I loved about this. They took the peer connection and they said, we want him to have at least 3 friends by the time he leaves this building and is ready to transition to the next, that ride his bus so that he's able to continue those connections. Because when you got into middle school, plans after school, extracurriculars, weekend things got planned on the bus, and he wasn't there to be part of them. So they really took that future vision. So if you have a minute, take the time to really read the trajectory versus the future planning statement, because they did a beautiful job with that. And I love this quote. This was from a parent who's also an educator. Trying Life Course elevates the student and the family's voice in the process in such a positive way. It can set a focus for all that truly impacts outcomes. Now, when we think about this, I talked a little bit about that why person-centered, or we talked about that one-page person-centered description and that person-centered space. But and that person-centered space creates space for participation. When you're thinking and talking about me, I become more of a participant in everything, which then has my empowered voice in the room. It allows us to explore and plan as a family and a team, reflect on past experience, encourage informed next steps in all of those domains. Remember way back when I showed you the domains. So daily life and employment. What am I going to do all day? Do I have preferences on daily routines? What needs to be part of my everyday? Do I want to work part-time or full-time? Where do I need more learning and support when I'm at school, when I'm in a job? So it's just looking into each one of those domains. Developing a life beyond work. How do you want to spend your time? What's important to you at home or in your community? How do you ensure your safety and financial security? And who and what do you care about? So work isn't everything. Getting a job is super important, but we have to have all these. Nobody stays in a job if they don't feel like they connect with the people there. So social and spiritual is important. Nobody stays in a job if they can't remain healthy and have healthy habits at work. And then they end up, so healthy living. And are we starting to have a conversation about how I'm part of my own healthcare decisions? Somebody had talked about decision making and good decisions and independent decisions. Am I being supported to understand my medical and behavior and developmental needs? Community living. Are we considering where and how I see myself living in the community? So you can look big place. But what I love is the story about Charting Life Course. When I was doing this with a family of a 3rd or a 4th grader, and they were getting ready to transition to middle school. And when mom talked, we did the whole training and they were going to come back and share what they did. And she came back and said, we're doing this whole training around Charting Life Course and planning and school planning and IEPs and everything. She came back and she goes, we called a contractor. I said, really? Tell me more. And she said, you talked about independence. You talked about supporting IEP goals at home and being part of that team. And independence is a goal, and our house does not allow him to be independent. I still make his lunch. I still take his laundry down and wash it all. I still take him out to the bus because he can't get out of the door on his own in his wheelchair. I still do it all. And I've got to change how we do things if we're talking about this life, person-centered life of independence. And I just love that story. Social and spiritual. Are there opportunities or strategies at school to help me really learn and connect? Am I working with the school team to get involved and be included in extracurricular activities at school or in the community? Have we explored clubs or activities? And this is pretty basic, but I love when that parent said, I want them to have 3 friends that ride their bus, so when they move into the middle school, no matter what classroom they are in, there's going to be a friend there potentially. And just really thinking in that way of how do we help make that happen and how do I have that conversation? And then as I expressed before, that advocacy and engagement. Are you helping me how to learn to talk about my disability? And that's been a huge voice for my daughter now too. She got a late diagnosis. And so she's really figuring that out. But am I in valued roles? Have you given me, I am cared about and cared for because I have a disability, but have you helped me see ways that I care about others and I care for others, and give me the opportunity to be that person for others, the holder of information, the sharer of the story, things like that. But like I said, and as I've showed as we've moved through here, they're all related, right? So thinking about this, overall, I said to you with that domain tool and that vision tool, we talked also about that introduction to that other tool that I wanted to show you. And this is a great one because it helps you think in all domains. And so daily life and employment, what do you think I would want to do or want to do during the day in my adult life? Where do you think I might want to live? How will I connect with others? And there's an identical tool that shows it with the I instead of they, right? So again, we're both doing it. And my favorite thing to do is have families do it and the person with a disability do it, and come to the table and share where they're the same. I put that too. I knew that. Let's start there because we both agree, right? Because there's going to be some stuff in these boxes that you don't agree with. And that's okay. They still need to be brought into the room and have conversation about them. Okay. So the life domain vision tool, these domains, whoops, I'm covering up all my stuff here, sorry. So we all lead lives that are made up of all these different domains. We're not just one aspect work, we're not just one aspect church or social, but they're all integrated, as I said before. And they help us think about this tool and domains help us think about those life experiences that we want beyond, because nobody is about their job. If we only work, that's not, we know our mental health is impacted by that. The things that we look forward to, those things in your want box, likely, if they involve work, they're about having a peaceful time at work and things like that, but not just having a job so we can have money. But we really want to look at how they identify what our life experiences, how they identify enriching our lives, right? So that's a great tool for that. So the integrated support star is just that. So somebody had talked earlier about how to integrate things into their lives in a different way. And what I love about Charting the Life Course is it does help us have those integrated conversations. And the one tool that's the visual for that, the graphic organizer, as I referred to before, is the integrated support star. And it's called a support star and not a service star because not all of us get services. We got nothing. We left the IEP and it wasn't until she finally at 28 qualified for opportunities for Ohioans with disability and career support. So, but we still have to live life, right? And we may not. Some people are going to graduate from high school and not get the waiver. How do we do this then? How are we going to manage? So this is called the integrated support star. And it has 5 points. The first one is personal strengths and assets. What things do I have? What do I bring to the table that's going to help me do what I want to do, right? Relationships. Am I making connections? Do I have relationships? Who can I rely on? Am I spending time doing the things I enjoy with people I care about? And how are we helping them do that? Community-based. Where do I enjoy going in the community? Who do I spend time with there? Am I learning what activities I even like? So many of our kids graduate from high school and they don't know what they like, partially because they've had fewer experiences, likely, but at the same time, sometimes what we like is when we don't disappoint the grown-ups in the room. And so often you want to do this, yeah, or do you want to do this, yeah, right? And so part of it is that really getting deeper with what they really enjoy and trying new things. And that's not always easy. I don't want to pretend trying new things is a conversation that we can have lightly, and it has to kind of be tickled in. But technology, am I finding ways to use technology, a smartphone, an iPad, to accommodate my difference or to grow relationships or to stay connected in all those spaces? And then eligibility supports. How can I use supports from other parts of the star to maximize what I qualify for in order to learn, connect, and grow community? So what we typically do when utilizing the star is we put the focus of the star in the middle, and we can do lots of different things with it. So this one is just mapping what they have, helping us recognize right now in this moment, what do we have to access and support us as a family on our journey, right? And this is the same young man that had the desire to go to Miami and stuff and game. And this is his support star. And so his name is James, and he listed all his strengths and assets. Great with computers, he's intelligent, he's a great singer. He listed the people that are important in his life that he can always rely on, right? He listed what technology he accesses right now. Scratch Studio, PowerPoint, Microsoft, Google Apps, iPhone, right? And then things that he utilizes in the community that everybody uses. Boy choir, chess club, church, science fiction club. And then lastly, he listed what he had in terms of eligibility. Special education, his Medicaid, and Hamilton County. Okay. And that just helped them see where they were. It's a starting point. It's a way to map what we have. Another thing you can do is mapping services and support by domains, right? And those are those things that I showed you earlier, those things that are just part of life. So this one's around supported decision making or making decisions, right? And this one is a great way to think about how we can work on that decision making. I know somebody put that in the chat. So in decision, what are my personal strengths? Do I have the ability to communicate my wants and needs and wishes? Do I use traditional voice to do that? Or do I use sign? Do I use gesture? Do I use a communication device? How do I manage money? Do I understand the concept of money? How might we use technology to help me do that? Instead of going immediately, he can't manage money, let's be a guardian. Can we use technology to support that, right? And then that decision-making, personal contract or agency agreement. So in other words, you can have somebody that you go into almost an agreement around supported decision-making versus guardianship or versus a power of attorney or versus nothing. And you can have a document. You can use power of attorney. You can use conservatorship. You can use a joint bank account for money management. You can use personal safety and that support of those family and friends that James listed. So there's great supports in this, and this is on the LifeCourse Tools website, which we'll put in the chat. It's lifecoursetools.com, and they have these things called starter stars. So there's a starter star for employment. There's a starter star for social and spiritual. There's a starter star for healthy living. There's a portfolio for each of those two, which includes a person-centered description, a trajectory, and a star. And so a great way to access these tools and start thinking of them, how to use them. This one I love because it helps us evaluate what we have and what we don't have. So the first thing you notice is there's empty boxes here or empty points of the star. And in hers, whoops, she went so far as to write down here, when you asked about community, we never have been in the community together. And eligibility sports, I'm not sure if we have anything.
Hey, Celia.
Yeah.
Just a quick question.
Yeah.
We did post the lifecoursetools.com. If it Cheryl was asking, where can you find the stars to use? Go ahead.
Yeah. What time is it? Let me pop out of here. I want to make sure.
You're fine. You have to.
No, I want to make sure I show them how to do that, but I want to. No, make sure you reference the slides, because there's some lists of different places you can, if you work on a tool, that you can take back and say, can we incorporate some of this into their IEP, into their transition plan? So there's some suggestion there. Okay. Less about the meeting and more about the vision. That was another mom. And so I want to stop here and really quickly, and I'll come back to it. Hopefully, I want to share my screen again and go to the website. Hold on one second. But all of them are available for free. And whoops. There we go. And you can print them off. Tools. Sorry, hold on. Oh, I think I'm not connected to the internet. Did I lose you guys? Are you there, Patty?
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Yeah. No, you're fine.
I don't know. Anyway, but they're all available at lifecoursetools.com, and you can print them off. And all you have to do is in the first tab down, it'll say person-centered or family-centered. If you want to look at the domains, it'll have a tab for the integrated support star. And there's tons of stuff there. So go tooling around. In your toolbox, you'll have one portfolio that includes a one page, a trajectory, and a star. And it says the student. I actually made one for education, so you could give it to their teachers and get input from them of what they think the students' strengths are and assets are, and what relationships they think are important to them, and then compare those with what you did, and compare them maybe with somebody outside the family. And then go back and look and find those places of agreement and go, okay, now we got a solid plan, because we can see that everybody thinks this is important to them. And you can work with them and say, do theirs too, and make it all part of it and part of the conversation, most importantly. So, oops, I'm going to close this real quick. Go back to my PowerPoint. All right.
I pulled up the website, Celia, if at the end, if you want to go through it.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
I want to make sure that we're, I offer time for questions and we're done at, at
7:30.
Yeah, at 7:30. Okay, so good. I was
Mhm.
starting to panic. Okay, so what we know is that while typically developing children have everyday experiences that get them ready for their future, children with disabilities have fewer chances to practice these skills. So families need to intentionally plan. Okay. And when we use Charting the Life Course as a way to plan, we have a shared language, we have a shared vision, and we have an opportunity for parents and students and even teachers and school teams to engage and begin to understand the value of their role and their impact of that process. So keeping that all in mind, you then can build this team approach in a way that you haven't done before. If you have opportunity to access SSAs and things like that, that'll be another opportunity to do that. So I want to go back because I buzzed through it a little bit. I want to go back to the star. So the last, but my favorite way to use a star is problem solving. And this is something you can share with your student. So our hand has 5 points, just like the star. So when you want to integrate or introduce the concept of Charting the Life Course star in your everyday, in a way that they start thinking about their work or their whatever they're working on, you can use your hand. And we know that personal assets, and we remember that there's relationships and technology and community, and we always do eligibility last, right? So if there's a problem at hand, we're trying to solve, there's no ice cream and I wanted ice cream. I'm just going to pick that as a simple, basic thing. And you just want, after we've been working with them and having them understand the tool and the process, you can go, okay, let's do it. What personal strengths do you have that might help you solve this problem of no ice cream? It could be that I can relax and get over myself and not have ice cream. It also could be maybe I have a UDF within walking distance, or maybe I could ask someone for help to get ice cream, whatever it might be, but we can make a list. What can you do? What personal assets and strengths do you have? What relationships do you have that could help you solve this ice cream problem? Well, dad could take me or mom could take me. Well, what do you need to do to make that happen, right? Or grandma makes ice cream. Maybe she could make me ice cream and I could have it later this week, right? How do I, what does everybody else who lives in the community do when they don't have ice cream, right? We've got UDF, we've got graders, we've got, Kroger, we've got Stop and Go, whatever it is that we can do, right? And then how can I use technology? I could look up a recipe. That's just a really simple example, but realistically, we can very quickly, and usually what we can do is find a spot where like, oh, I can call dad, dad could take me. Well, why don't you go talk to your dad and see if he's willing to do that? And dad says, I can't do that. But we could do it tomorrow. Okay, I'm going to use technology and put a reminder in my phone or in your phone. Dad, can you put an alarm? We're going to do something so you don't forget tomorrow we're getting ice cream. And I feel more reassured. So it's a way of thinking. It's paper courage is how it's referred to by a lot of families who are doing it, especially when we're doing it to grow engagement and self-determination, that ability to understand I have an impact and I have control of my life and I'm becoming an adult. And that means I get to have those opportunities to make decisions and have those conversations about what's important to me and how you can support me to have the life I want to live. So that is the star. What I want to do next, hold on one second, before we go into looking at the other, I want to, and I'm really going to depend on you guys here. So I know everybody can hear me. I know some of you have cameras on. I'm hoping all of you will participate because I think this is important. But I want you guys, and I know I took up an hour of your night, and I want to make sure that I've met your needs. I'm looking for the chat, and I don't know why I can't find it. It's weird.
It should be in the toolbar. Yours might be at the top or bottom. Mine's at the bottom. Yours might be at the top.
Oh, it's on the side here. I'm looking at it.
Okay.
That's not the toolbar because it's right here next to me. Okay. So what I want to do is I want you to each take a minute and think about what you liked, what you learned, and what's your leap. Okay. So what you liked about what you heard, what was new information that you hadn't thought about? And that leap is, what are you going to try because you came tonight? And what I really want to do is be able to put you in chat rooms to talk to each other. What I'm concerned about is when we do that, sometimes people don't unmute and somebody ends up in there by themselves. So Patty, I'm going to ask you, because this is something we find very helpful. If folks would turn your cameras on and your mics on if you're interested in doing something like that and really talking about it. Otherwise, I'll ask that folks unmute and just talk. But I'd really love it if people would participate, because this is the space where you're going to really get something out of this in a different way than if you just hear me talk tonight.
I think if they would just raise their hand and talk, because we're recording. If you go into a
Okay.
break room, it doesn't
That's
record. Right. So that they can follow up. If you have anything you want, you can put it in the chat box. Or you can if you do the reaction, you can raise your hand. There's reactions on your toolbar, and you can unmute if you want and talk. You have what you liked and what you learned. What was the last one? I didn't quite catch.
A leap. What are you willing to try?
Leap. Okay, leap.
Oh, you're not seeing it anymore. I'm sorry. Hold on.
Yeah.
I'll put it back up. And if people are willing to talk, that would be super helpful. Because I think sometimes it gets the juices going of really getting something out of tonight.
And if you put it in the chat box, I'll read it for you. If you don't want to speak, it's fine.
Okay, so the resource itself is something, and we'll jump onto the website in a little bit, and I'll show you even more. But yeah, it's a great resource. I like how this can be a universal tool to any area of anyone's life. So and that's the beauty of it. It was created by families with kids with disabilities. There was a stakeholders meeting, and they continued to converse with these families and say, what does it mean to truly feel supported? And so it was through that process that these tools bubbled up. In Ohio, there's lots of ways for you to participate. There's a lot of trainings. So I'll show you the FRNO website too when we're done here so that you can access that. And it can be used, it It was developed by and for people with disability, but it can be used by anyone. I'm going to have Michelle, I see your hand up. Go ahead and unmute. Thank you.
I think one of the big things that I looked at is these tools are, you have the ability to use them not just at home, but in school. You can also, not just our perspective as family members, but also get the perspective of the person we're caring for, helping develop. And sometimes they're not able to verbalize their needs, and it gets them to think about their future and describe them in a different way if they need to, besides trying to tell you, especially if they're not very verbal. And I'm willing to try a lot of the tools. I really like the trajectory one, as well as the domain. So I think I'm going to be trying those for my son before we go to his IEP meeting and see how everybody takes in his meeting.
That's awesome. Thank you so much. And really all you can do is try. And I always tell people, if it doesn't work the first time, it's not because you didn't do it well. It's not because they don't work. It just means that at that moment in that time, and just keep going back to sometimes it's just a conversation. It's never a tool. What do you like? What do you want? What do you want? Describe your best day, and then listening through that. Melissa said, I like the resources. I learned about better planning for my son and Leap. My husband and I will try the planning tools to use with Cincinnati State professors for us to help him plan his future. Beautiful. And if that goes well, please share, because what's really exciting about that is it's one more group of people we haven't tapped into, seeing it and wondering about it. So that's awesome. Thank you so much. And Melissa, if you need help with that, please make sure that you stay in touch and ask questions, because that's, believe it or not, my job. So you're not going to bother me. Any of you email me or whatever, you're going to be in. So Tom, learned importance to have my daughter list her wants and what's important to her when parents are older and gone. And there's a lot of ways to use these tools as we're aging, and it gets us thinking about what we want too. I always say that we as a family, our trajectories are colliding. I don't want to raise hands yet, but because sometimes it's uncomfortable, but there are a lot of us that don't see ourselves retiring because we have a child with a disability. We don't see it look the same as it would have if not. And what I think these tools allow is that place of possibility. If we really wanted to travel in our older years, what can we do for the next 5 years to grow skills and increase our resources to a place that, maybe once every couple of years, we really could travel on our own, or maybe they could live on their own, and what would that take? And really going deep with that conversation, not only with your systems people, but with your family and other people that care about you and your family. Nicole, I see you have your hand up.
Hi, yes, sorry. I was I apologize because I have been cooking and I think I turned my camera around. That happened.
There you go.
When I dropped it.
Thank you for putting your hand up. What's up?
So I've taken the Charting a Life course several classes over the last 8 or 9 months. And I love it. I love the versatility of it. I like that you can use specific things in an IEP. You can use it specifically with services, with specialists, with the school. Like, the versatility of it is so important. I will say, every time I've tried to have a conversation with my 17-year-old about it, it usually is like, and I'm done talking now.
Yes. Yeah, that's not unusual with 17-year-olds.
Right. Right. And so I'm hoping that we'll get there, and I look forward to being able to use it one day. We're not there yet.
Well, and I'd also use it with something that's really important to him. He wants to go to a concert, and you're like, okay, let's talk about this. What personal strengths and assets do you have that allow me to relax and know that you can go to a concert safely and that you have the money, all those things. And then relationship. But if there's something super important to them, the other thing that we can talk about a little bit is what you don't want. When we end up in a situation where clearly there's something going on, and just saying, what do you try? What do you not want? And there's a direct correlation between want and not want. We had a student that said, I'm trying to remember how the story goes. I don't want to get suspended and I don't want to go to prison. And we said, okay, what's that going to take? Because that was already kind of in the cards potentially. And they were saying, okay, if you don't want that, what do we have to do? Well, I gotta go to school. I gotta do this. I gotta do this. I gotta do this. And they played around with it in a way that it was helping him get what he wanted. The conversation was driven by him. So instead of looking into the future, what's the problem I'm trying to solve right now? And find a space where it kind of works. Maybe just a suggestion, and it may or may not work. Go ahead.
I like that. That
Michelle?
was good. Thank you.
Okay. Michelle, you have your hand up again or still? I don't want to overlook that. Okay, I'm going to guess it was still. Rachel says, how might this tool be used by a child with severe intellectual disability? How do parents get at what he wants? So I always say to families, and I don't have lived experience in this space, but I can help connect you with families that do potentially. I will say two things that we've suggested that seem to work. Number one is often we know for those kids what they don't want, because we're going to see visually, we're going to hear, they're going to communicate that something ain't right on the smaller scale. So you might know things about them because you know them well, that tells you what they don't want. So you're going to know from a comfort standpoint, do you know if they don't want to be in the community and they always want to be home? Go back and kind of assess. I can tell on certain days they're willing to go out, or they're always happy if we're out and at a park or things like that. Because my sister had a very significant disability. And though we didn't know whether they preferred, I don't know, I can't think of a preference, preferred to be in the common room watching television, or if she preferred to be in the other room, where there was music playing, whatever it was. But we began to learn those things and watch for those things. And so that's one way. The other thing that we strongly suggest, and UMKC talks about this too, is that space of having 3 or 4 people that know her well, make their best guess at what they want and what they don't want every day. What's her best day? You likely know that there might be certain foods involved in her best day. There might be, and not knowing your child well, I'm kind of guessing, but there might be certain places that we go that help her have her best day. And start with her best day and say, if this is her best day, how do we make sure this happens frequently enough? How do we build her life and her supports in a way that this gets to happen frequently? Because, and what we do sometimes is talk about, that's my job. I take her to her favorite places. I make sure she has her favorite foods. And my life becomes making sure that. But if we can build a life with the star to problem solve, to build different relationships with other people that know those things too, those that are paid, those that are unpaid, we find new places and expose in the community. So maybe it's not always only this place. Does that help? Otherwise, we can talk one-to-one. But Rachel, does that help a little bit? I'll assume it does until you tell me otherwise. Any other questions like that? All right, well, what I want to do then is take you, Patty, do you want to just show your screen, or do you want me to go ahead and do it? You want to share your screen so we can do the website?
Either way, if you want to do it, that's fine. There was a question there.
And this one?
Do you have a simplified tool that can be used to prevent a tantrum?
Specific tool. I think it's not so much about the tool there. It's going to be the conversation. Preventing the tantrum. Let me think about this a little bit. Preventing the tantrum in the immediate time is, and I don't know what the tantrum's about. So, it basically, tantrums typically are want or don't want, right? And what we know is a kid who doesn't have direct and great communication typically behavior like a tantrum is I'm communicating something to you. In the moment of the tantrum, and I know this from my good friend, Sarah Buffy, and if you guys ever go to have a chance to see her speak, she's a trauma, oh, isn't she amazing? Oh my God, just absolutely. So anyway, she's going to tell you in the middle of a tantrum, oh, wait a minute, no, it's this. Things are going to go right through. I'm not going to hear anything you're saying. So in the moment, if the tantrum's already happening, you hold them and you say, I hear you, and I know this is hard, and I am so sorry. And let's just breathe, and all those things. When the tantrum is over is when you might be able to expose yourself to that conversation of what is it that, you know, but they have to feel seen and you show that you understand. So once the tantrum's kind of in place, and I'm not a trauma-informed specialist, but I love when that intersects with charting the life course, because it's a beautiful thing. And she does have videos on YouTube that you can look up. But it's that moment where you're trying to, we want to stop the tantrum because then we know that will stop the anxiety and the fear and everything else. But at that point, it's really giving them, and Nicole, if you can add anything here, giving them that opportunity to be seen and reflect back that you know it's hard. Go ahead, Nicole.
So one of the things, my daughter is late diagnosed autistic as well. And so I've spent an awful lot of time because she's been in burnout for almost 3 years now and other things. And so when they're in that that state, in fight or flight mode.
Mm-hmm.
And so because they're, I have to switch speaker, my earbuds died.
Yeah.
Because they're in that heightened fight or flight mode, that's all that's coming out, is they're just spewing things, they're acting out. You really have to pay attention to what led up to that. What led up to that moment, and those are your nonverbal cues. That communication is the most important, but not until they calm down. And like for my daughter, it could take 2 hours or it could take 3 days, honestly, before she's ready to actually talk about what happened, what her needs are, and what that is. And so, you know, you kind of have to learn your child, and those nonverbal cues are the most important. But in that moment, you cannot communicate with them. You just have to sit there with them, and you just have to let all of that kind of go through. And as hard as that is as a parent, because it's hard.
Her name is Sarah Buffy.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, Nicole. They had just put in the chat. And she's phenomenal. She has several YouTube videos, including on the Ohio Department website. She just spoke at the Synergy conference up in Northern Ohio this week. And I just, and funny, Nicole, that you say that in your your daughter with her late diagnosis, that's where we met her, was in that process. And she was just such a lifesaver. Okay, I'm going to share my screen. And I'll try to send you some more resources for that, Patty, if you want me to. Whoops, I want to do basic. There we go. All right, I'm going to share my screen. I want to tell you about 2 websites. Are you seeing the websites? Or are you seeing my blue screen? Okay, good.
Seeing the website.
So this one is the Family Resource Network of Ohio. If you're like Nicole and you're going to become a groupie, and Nicole, I just want to hear lots more about what you know and learned, and I want to hear more stories. You're going to go to the Family Resource Network of Ohio. This is the hub for Charting the Life Course in Ohio. Okay. And so you're going to go to the tab called Charting the Life Course, and you're going to find all kinds of explanations about the principles and the tools. That's tons of information. You can go to the videos and you'll see, you know, I gave you an hour if you want to sit through a 3-hour one. If you want to sit through one just on the one page, you'll see lots of different videos about different things. Early planning, one-page person-centered description, respite. This one is about an early intervention educator. So there's lots of different ones. Sorry, my computer is slow and you're just getting black boxes. If you go to the tab that is listed as, whoops, now it's just doesn't want to move. There we go. That says events, it's a calendar. And you can see what trainings are available this week. So next week we have one, Ohio Family to Family, Building Personal Networks. We have Charting the Life Course Live event. I think this one's mine. On the 28th on self-determined and informed decision making. That one's going to change hopefully tomorrow because we're going to bump it. No, that's not right. That's right. And then Charting the Life Course Live on education. That's an education one. So you can just see all the different possible events. Okay. And then if you go back here, under trainings, if you're interested in bringing a training in, or, you know, someplace you know of a group that could have it, you can ask more questions about different trainings and someone will contact you. And then lastly is, I'm going to watch the time, is contact. If you want to get on the email list and receive all the notifications of all the different opportunities, you can fill out a form and then you'll get emails from us of every opportunity. Nicole, is your hand up again or was it left up?
No, that was left up. I'm
Okay,
so
no
sorry.
worries. I just didn't want to ignore it. And then
No,
for the
but I was looking for it.
Go ahead. Okay. All right. And this one is your lifecoursetools.com. And this one is the national nexus. So it's the national center around charting the life course. And this is where you're going to get your tools. So if you go to Life Course Library, you see Life Course Framework. Can you see this well? Yeah. Okay. Life Course Framework, foundational tools, exploring the domains, exploring the life stages, integrated support star. So those are each of kind of and the framework, I'll show you this one because I didn't talk about this tool because I can't do it all in an hour, but I want to show you when you go to the framework, it's going to walk you through the whys of charting the life course. And there's some great information and there's lots of videos that you can watch that are just really nice to kind of get a gist of why they created this. And if you go to under, you know, person centered, this is where you're going to find tools that are going to have the I and the voice, right? And so when you come here, there's always a nice video to start, and then it's going to be all the person-centered tools that say I. There's that vision tool that I showed you. I mentioned reciprocal roles and mapping relationships, and those are kind of additional tools if you wanted to try. And then here's that portfolio. So you got a portfolio that says student, but here there'd be one that says I. And I think I gave them I too, but before you move in, here we go. And any of these you can print out. Now, when you print them out, you can choose 8.5 by 11 or 11 by 17. Not everybody has the capability to print at 11 by 17, but they're also fillable. So you don't have to print them out. You could type with or for the person. This is not opening and I don't know why. Oh, there it is. Silly me. I forgot that it does it this way now. All right. So then you can see that you can just type immediately in the box. But just save it. Don't forget to save it, because otherwise you type it in the box, and if you forget to save it, you don't have it because you're typing on the internet. And it has each of the boxes, and you can work to fill them in, or you can print them out, right? I would encourage you to, when you talk to school, maybe they do it as journal prompts. Sometimes they won't do it for us. I forget who it was that said she could. Oh, it was Nicole. Maybe you could get your intervention specialist to make these writing prompts or something like that, or something you talk about at school instead of at home, because sometimes they won't do it for us, but they'll do it for others. And then if you go to the integrated support star, that's where those filled out starter stars are. I'll show you here. So they've got both a regular star and a split star, which is one of those ones I showed you where it says now and future. And then there's videos on each one, but then here's your starter stars that you can print out. So social and spiritual, and they all kind of get you started, but you could add things that apply more directly to you. And then the last thing I want to show you are the life course. So life stages, and this is a great thing because there's here, I'll show you. Sorry. There's a great tool called this Experiences and Questions book. I'm going to download that real quick. And this book is great when you're trying to work with your team and you're trying to think of things, or as a family that you want to work on, because it goes by life stage. So if you start here, we're in the domain of daily life and employment. And we're looking at what do we do in early childhood around daily life and employment, which seems kind of ridiculous, but are you sending me to preschool? So what are we doing with education? Are you helping me have opportunities to make choices, that decision-making piece between 2 or 3 options? Do I have the opportunity to make mistakes? That's something that we often, at least I was guilty of that. Are you keeping a vision in mind for my future as I learn and grow? Do you view me as being able to do what other children do? I loved when I heard people, when they put in the box of what they wanted them to have a life outside of home. They wanted them to have a job, things like that. So the only way we can make that happen is if we are brave enough to talk and think about it, right? So it goes by and it does each domain, but it also does transition and adulthood. So it goes all the way up. And that aging place, that place of I'm worried about what are they going to do when I'm gone? And what skills do I need to have in that space? And so what I always tell people, if your child's, let's say your child's in transition, I encourage them to read the ones in transition. I encourage them to look at the ones that are coming up to be prepared. And then I encourage them to look at the one below to see what we might have missed, right? Anything with a star develops, or it encourages and develops self-determination skills, which are those skills that make me want to do things versus letting others do them for me. And that's a growth thing. And our kids who are developmentally delayed often are developmentally delayed in this too. So continuing to look back at this and saying, let's work on this, or let's have a mind of how we might be talking about this. And these can be great transition goal kind of conversations that you can have, but it's in every domain. If that's overwhelming, because it's all the domains and all the life levels, you can instead go to the quick guides, and each one is just a smaller version of any one of the quick guides at that, I'm looking at the time, 3 minutes, at that stage. And they're just going to go through each one of them and kind of abbreviate the discussion. But it's nice. Might be nice to give the transition one to your transition coordinator if you're still at school, things like that. So I hope that helped. I did have a, to show you, all you have to Google is Sarah Buffy and you'll find her on Facebook. You'll also find her on DODD's page, their YouTube page, and she's fabulous. She's absolutely fabulous. And it all, we often think we don't have trauma. Living our lives is traumatic for anyone, disability or not. But a lot of her stuff just applies. It just applies. Nicole's my new best friend because she likes some Sarah Buffy too. So go look at her stuff. It's very engaging. It fits right together. The integration of that, the integration of person-centered, the integration of a life in the full life in the community, being who I am and being appreciated for who I am. It's all embraced there. Okay, I got 2 minutes. Any more questions? I do see there's 4 comments, but I don't know.
There was one on trying to find the guides. I have Michelle looking for that link that's going to stick it in the
into
chat
the
box.
Toolbox.
Yeah,
Okay,
the direct link to that guide.
Okay, thank you. I'm sorry I didn't include. Sometimes I don't do it because I don't want to overwhelm. But when we had the extra time to show you where to find stuff, and just when you're sitting, I always say when you're sitting up much later than you should be on your computer or whatever, because it's quiet and you finally get time to yourself. Go in. It's amazing what you can. That website is so rich, and if you want conversation about it to learn more what others are doing with it, there's our community of practice. We have a community of practice meeting each month, and I think it's coming up. Let me look at get back to, and that'll be on FRNO. Oops, there it is. Let me go to events. Come on. Here we go. Let's see. Community of practice. Where is that? I'm gonna have to look at it. I think for some reason I was thinking it was. I'll look at my own calendar to not. But that's a place where you can go hear what people are doing with it and thinking about. So it's the 25th, it looks like, is the community of practice meeting, and that's but you can find that on that calendar of different things you might want to do. Is there any other questions? It is 7:30. It is the deadly hour, and I appreciate it. But if anybody wants to unmute, I'm going to put my email. Oh, that's what I can do. Hold on.
Yeah, go ahead if you want to add in your contact information. And Celia is really good. If you have any questions, like if you're starting the process, let's just say you just start it and you start working on these forms and you're like, I'm stuck. Yeah. Just send her an email or shoot her an email and say, this is where I'm at. What do I do? Something as simple as that.
Yep, because we love working with families, and there's part of my contract that is to support a family as they're doing this and get them in touch with all this stuff. I also put links. And Patty, I don't know if you want to add these links to the toolbox too. There's somebody who talked about decision making. There's a great supportive decision making tool in there on questions to ask myself and kind of rate myself as to where I am and what skills I want to build moving forward, because it always has that future mindset. I've got the starter stars there, which I showed you in the quick guide. So those are all there too, and links to the website. So the last question I have for you, each of you, please use your phones and scan, and I can give you a link to Patty to, and need folks to do a survey. Or if you do a survey, Patty, and you can send me your survey, either way is fine.
We don't do a survey as such for this, but you can put the link or I can get the link and send it to everybody, but you can put the link there in the chat.
Okay, hold on one second.
So they can do the survey. It helps with their training and everything if you can do the survey.
It would be basically
thank you. I'm gonna go because I need to go help my son with the project. But thank you so much. You did a great job. A lot of information.
And we'll make sure we email folks with the link too, because it helps with my funding. It's important.
I'll do it right now.
Okay, hold on one second. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, they're getting the link.
Yep. I'm sorry. Okay. Nope, that's not it. Hold on. Too many, Patty. Too many. I always have the QR code up there because it's easier, but at night with families, I'm often finding them on their phones. Here we go. No. Come on. And then they don't have the ability. There we go. I almost have it. Thank you for your patience.
Sure.
And then Patty, if you maybe, it's not on here. Hold on. I'm so sorry.
While you're pulling that up, I'm going to go ahead and close out. And just
Patty, let's
stop
just
the recording.
Send it to him. Let's just send it to him if you don't mind. We'll send an email separate, and I'll get it to you before we hang up because I'm not finding it. It's going to take me a second.
That's fine. I don't know if Michelle's on here. If you use that QR code, you can pull up the link maybe and just stick it in the chat box while I'm finishing up here.
That would be awesome.
I want to thank everybody for coming and listening. And for those who are going to listen, we will have this on YouTube in a few days. It takes me a little bit to get everything uploaded, but we will have it on YouTube in a few days. You can look at it, share it, listen to it over and over again. And if you're like me, I have to take it in stages. I don't get everything the first time. So feel free to, you'll be able to get into this directly, into the presentation. We have them in our Google Salt Drive. And then we'll be also uploading this video to YouTube. But 1 second, why close the recording out and feel free to ask it. I mean, you can unmute and just, I'll be on for a few minutes anyway. So 1 second. And again, thank you again, Celia, for presenting. It was a wonderful presentation.
Thank you. Thank you so much, guys.